Okay, so good evening, everyone, and welcome to the New Era Paranormal podcast. This week we have JD, Neppy's president, and Irene Kiloways hosting the show. The guest this week is Joe, Donna, and Rosie from the RBF Paranormal group.
Dana.
Dana, sorry. Each of the members are trained mediums with different paths and honing in their abilities. So, can you all explain how you found your abilities and became involved with the paranormal field?
Yeah, sure. I I think since I was young, I've certainly had experiences and had knowledge. More, Irene will know this kind of claircognizant, the kind of knowing of things that are happening kind of elsewhere. But it really wasn't the um, COVID lockdowns that I started like seriously exploring mediumship in general and my interest in the paranormal, which goes back decades. And Yeah, I took a class with Cindy Keza, which is actually how we all met. Not in that particular class, but in other classes. Um, and I have since been just taking lots of mediumship and paranormal investigation classes with either her and different experts um, in psychic medium training. So Lisa Williams was one of my teachers as well. She had a lot of very early on paranormal investigations that I think most people don't know about, but from like 20 years ago kind of thing. And was doing it, I forget, like on Destination America or some channel like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
Way back then.
way back when. So yeah, I've been interested in this since I was young, and not just paranormal, but kind of cryptids and kind of the unknown and that kind of thing. My own kind of background is I'm a trained archaeologist. Worked for quite a while for a decade doing that, and then am a professional software engineer since then for a long time. So I guess de facto, I'm like the techie guy of the group.
Very cool. How about Rosie?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I actually grew up kind of having a knowing as well. A lot of it, like from as early as I can remember, I believed in reincarnation, and nobody like told me anything about it. It just made sense to me. And then as I got older, I started having like, it was like deja vu, and at least that's how it was explained to me. But later on, I found out it was precognitive dreams. So, but they weren't anything like big or lottery numbers or anything. But it was just like little things. Like the one that is really comes to mind is when my grandfather died. I remember being like in the dream. I didn't know he died at that point in the dream, but I remember sitting in the back of the car and looking out the window and seeing a guy staring at me and the car. And so when we were going to my grandfather's funeral, that's when I saw that exact image. Like it was just, everything was exactly the same. Let's see. Fortunately, like a lot of this is, I credit this to my dad, but he could tell I had abilities really early on, and I would see things that were really kind of scary to me. And like one of the things that I saw was the best way I can describe them is, in Beetlejuice, where the guy is sitting in the waiting room that's all burnt and he's smoking a cigarette. That's what I saw. And I told my dad, and he just like, it's okay. It's not going to hurt you. And so from there, he kind of, I don't know, nurtured the whole thing. instead of like, some people just kind of blowing it off or saying, no, she's crazy, you need help, or, that sort of thing. So that was really, it's really personal to me. It's more, I don't know, I'm finding out it's more and more personal. And because especially I lost my dad in 2018. So, but I too, it was in Cindy's class. I was one of her mentees. I was in her, what was it called, Joe?
Yeah, it was like that's how Rosie and I met. It was a 6-month mentorship.
Mentorship.
Yeah. Irene, were you in
And
that? I can't.
No, I
remember.
did the other. I did the regular
month-long.
mediumship training. I think it was 6 weeks.
Yeah, the
I think
one
I did
right
that
before
one
that.
too.
Yeah.
But I've realized like my abilities, well, they're all over the place. But like Cindy kind of talks about, you have all the clairs. And sometimes when you're like trying to do a reading or even going and doing like paranormal things, all of that kind of plays in. So like clairvoyance is a big one because I can see with my third eye. And sometimes I can see in front of me, but most of the time it's with my third eye. But you go to a place, you smell something, you hear something, you feel something, that kind of thing. And I've personally have been on different ghost hunts with the Ghost Brothers and Jane Pittman from Holzer Files. And actually I've done some in-person classes with Cindy in Lilydale, which was a lot of fun.
Those are fun, yeah. It's fun. It's fun to work with because we're used to her through Zoom. So it's really fun to work with her in person.
Yeah.
And you realize how tiny she actually is when
I know. But she's so sweet. She's got the best personality.
She does. She is authentically herself, and that's what I think we all love about her. Is just she's authentically Cindy, and that's what I think she's taught all of us to be authentic in who we are.
Yeah.
All right, Dana. Dana, do you want Dana or Dana Joy?
Oh, just Dana is fine. That's just
Okay.
whatever I had typed into Zoom, so Dana's fine. It's just always there. Yeah, so that's what got me into Cindy's class. It's like, she just seems really down to earth, really legit, and there's something wrong with me. I'm seeing things that I shouldn't be seeing, and I've been to the doctor, I've been to the psychiatrist. They don't have answers, so I need to ask her some questions. I feel like she would have answers, and then her just being herself is the reason I kept going back, because it's like, yeah, you can't just turn it off. What do you want to do with it? And I'm like, I don't know. You know what? I didn't plan on embracing it, and I turned from being a skeptic and just having experiences my whole life that I had to ignore and try not to talk about to, okay, whatever, let's just embrace it. I don't have to understand how it works or why. I just know that it does. So my first experience was, I was 6 years old and I woke up in the middle of the night and the man that used to own our house was standing beside my bed in the same outfit he wore to his funeral. And he was walking toward a bright light coming in my window. And I called for my mom and she said, oh, you just had a bad dream. I'm like, Mom, I was wide awake. I don't sleep, like I was sitting there reading a book and I looked over and there he was. So wide awake. And that was just the first time, and like Rosie said, sometimes it's right in front of me instead of, third eye. And it's clairvoyance is definitely my strongest clair. And sometimes I wish it wasn't because now my kids are going through the same thing. And for them, it's a little startling. I have a 6-year-old and a 12-year-old. So my 12-year-old's used to it and she just mumbles and walks off and, but the 6-year-old's a little startled when he sees things. So it did carry on to them. But yeah, I've had some amazing mentors and met some amazing friends along the way. And, I've definitely found that, I guess one-on-one like readings aren't really my thing, but like helping people with, if they're having an issue with basically what I call a bad roommate, a paranormal problem, like it's the same as having, it's like having a bad roommate and you just have to lay some ground rules sometimes or just figure out, like how can we work this out? Let's figure out how to communicate, But that's kind of the sort of stuff I like to really do, and helping with, using all of those clairs and all of those things that we've learned to help find missing people, missing pets, stuff like that is really what I like to do. So that's more my thing. And then I let them figure out the rest. I don't know.
One of the big things or best explanations she ever gave about our abilities too is that you can't turn it on and off, right? You can only turn down the volume up or down. And so, I mean, I can't think of any better way to describe it. So when you were all talking, it's kind of like you didn't have a choice and you can't ignore it. And Joe brought up something really, really big, and that he talked about how the pandemic kind of pushed him. And I think a lot of us noticed that we, for the most part, not everybody, and not everybody in this space, but the pandemic caused this new wave and this new push of a whole new generation of mediums. And we've talked about it in groups and classes before. What are your thoughts on why or how this caused that shift, that push?
Well, I know. Sorry, is that okay?
No,
I'll
go
go.
ahead.
Sorry. So I kind of feel like the shift is a lot like when spiritualism happened. So when spiritualism started becoming more and more popular, it was after the Civil War. So if you start thinking about like COVID and when like the before times and all that time, all these people are dying, all of this stuff is happening. Everybody I think was starting to try to look for answers, some sort of answer and some sort of I don't know, way to handle grief in a way, and feel that sense of I want to be with my relative or my friends or that sort of thing. So that's kind of how I see the whole COVID thing happening.
Yeah, I think one of the things about COVID that is interesting, at least for like mediumship instructors, was they had to change their whole game plan too. Like, and they had to do this, online Zoom thing, and they weren't even really sure. Can we do this like online? Can we do this remotely? Can we do that kind of thing? And I think it was either the first class that Cindy offered or one of the first 2 or 3. And I just kind of took it because honestly, I was like, I've always been interested in this. It's a beginner's workshop. What have I got to lose? I'm sitting here staring at my ceiling. So might as well. And, for me, it opened up a completely different world. Not a completely different world, but like, a different, different experience.
Level.
Yeah, different level. Yeah.
Well, you
But
also come from
I
that
think what
scientific
Rosie,
background. Sorry, Joe.
yeah, I was just going to mention that, what Rosie touched on too, kind of the kind of, societal angst around what was happening, I think probably shifted a lot of us kind of inward thinking and tapping into that kind of area. So.
And it was probably a push for you too, having that background, that scientific background.
Yeah, sure. And, I remember watching some of the very early, like, paranormal investigation shows on whatever Discovery. And I would always be kind of looking at them, really skeptically. I always basically believe in an afterlife and ghosts and that kind of thing. But, a lot of times I'd be like, come on, really? Like, that I don't know about that one. And whoever the on-air personality is freaking out, I'm like, that was probably just a spider that ran across your leg. Come on. So
Don't tell that to Shane.
well, not that was much later. Shane, the stuff Shane did.
Hey, they sent him to some seriously spidery places. He's allowed.
They did.
That's just wrong. what they
I just thought it was
put him
hilarious.
through.
I'm sorry, Shane, if you're watching.
Go. Go down in the dark hole in the basement. Why me? Poor Shane.
Yeah, during the lockdowns and stuff, it was like, they couldn't film. They had to like take all these precautions, and they actually had time to teach. So it was really cool that like that became available, online, and it was something that even in person that we can do now. Like I don't get to, like, I can't, well, I think I'm the only one here with kids. So like I'm always like, stuck doing stuff like, there's school, there's this, there's that, and I don't get to like travel as much. So being able to do things remotely too was like something that became a possibility during that. And, taking your first psychometry class via Zoom. It's like, oh, and don't show them what it is either. And they can't touch it. I'm like, how's that going to work? And then it worked. And it was one of the most
Yeah.
amazing classes I've ever taken. I actually discovered something about myself during that class that I didn't know, and that I can tell when someone's about to pass away. And it's one of those gifts I'd love to give back, but of course you can't do that either. No take backs, no give back. And that's another thing. You can turn it down, but you can't turn it off, and you can't give it back. It's there for a reason, and you'll figure out what that reason is, But I found that out during that class, and then I had another teacher afterward, like not a regular mentor, a different teacher, and they're like, exercises, like, what do you mean? We're doing psychometry. You can't do that online. I'm like, what? But I've always done it on what? Like everywhere I go, I'm touching things physically and in person, but like you can absolutely do that online. It works great. Like what? How can we not do it? We're not practicing? Like I was so confused because I just thought that was normal. So that's when I was like, okay, I need to study with different mentors and see how they feel about, because I really like that, the people that I have learned from, they don't limit you. They're like, I never thought about it, but why not? Why limit yourself? Like they always encourage you to like push, and like, hey, why not try it, see what works, So there's a lot you can do remotely that I never thought was possible.
They had to push the boundaries before, so when the pandemic hit, so it makes a lot of sense. They embraced it.
There was also a lot of paranormal teams that arose out of COVID that weren't running before. So where did the RBF Paranormal team start from? And what was the goal?
Yeah, so let's see. Dana, Jade, who I think is in the chat, and I were in a couple of Cindy's intensive paranormal, like month-long workshops, and we just happened to be in week after week in the same exercise groups, and all three of us, really kind of hit it out of the park and just kind of bonded. And Rosie and Dana knew each other from before. I knew Rosie from before as well. So we started practicing and doing like a circle. And I think Irene, you're part of my little Facebook group that is around that. And
yes,
and we all had kind of the same core belief about paranormal investigations, which is we weren't as interested in like going to the well-known places. We were more interested in trying to help people, and also to be, somewhat unique in that having 4 psychic mediums be able to give voice to the spirits, because I think that's one thing that we all kind of believe is that we also have to tell their stories because they can't tell it themselves. So yeah, we just thought, okay, let's do that. Let's try it out. And we're all geographically dispersed. Like none of us are near each other at all. which
definitely made it easy on yourself there.
Yeah. We made it super simple. But yeah, I don't know, Dana or Rosie, if you want to add anything.
I mean, I honestly, I cherish this group a lot because, like, even though we're all over the country, like, all over. Like it still feels like a really good bonding experience. And even if it's not like anything paranormal, like we're still there for each other. And that's been really, really amazing for me. At least I know it's amazing for y'all too. But it's nice to know that I have friends. I have friends here where I live, but it's nice to know that I have friends that I can talk about this on a regular basis, that we can practice, and that we can, like, I don't know, like we on Thursdays we usually have a draw and bitch session. We'll just draw and
Right.
just.
I've been trying to come to that one.
It's fun.
You should. It's awesome.
I'll be there.
I mean, we just end up talking about whatever, but still, it's really meaningful, and it's not like we're doing spirit drawings or anything like that. It's just we're drawing or doing something creative.
And it's the most important thing about it that makes it fun is it's just that judgment-free safe zone. Like anything goes, whatever you talk about stays there. It's like you just, it's like, your mentors, like when you first come to class, they're like, this is a safe space. It's okay to crash and burn here if you're practicing. That's the best place to do it. And you're like, oh God, I don't want to get a no, doing a reading. And it's like, once you get over that, it's like, it's like, no, you really need your safe space. Like, this is a curated safe space that your friends got your back. Like if they got your back during a paranormal investigation, and when you're literally, putting yourself in those shoes and potentially in danger, depending on what the case is, they got your back every day in life. And it's, it's good to know. And it's just like, who do you turn to? Who do you talk to about certain things, and it's like, man, the weirdest thing happened today. Who would understand? It's like these guys.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like who else can I, sit down with and chat about earth elementals or, water elementals or, or
Dinosaur
like Damon
ghosts.
said,
Or
Dinosaur
a
ghosts.
weird creature you saw that nobody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or like you have a dream, or you have like for me, I've been recently getting songs stuck in my head, and I know that they're related to something. Like one it was about Rosemary. That's the name that came through, and I swear it was for my psychiatrist. And I'm like, I don't think I can do this because I don't want her to start thinking I'm crazy. Like, I'm like, maybe not. I'm sorry, Rosemary.
But that's the thing, is we can share that kind of stuff. And I'm sure, that happens on a lot of paranormal teams is, you start to share your experiences and things that you couldn't share necessarily with kind of people outside of this, area of interest. Which I think is also why a lot of those conventions and things are really great. I know Irene, you do a lot of those.
Yeah.
To be able to go there and just hear from different people and different perspectives. Because it's
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I actually have a funny story about going to one of these conventions. I didn't know at the time who she was, but I was hanging out with my friend Damien.
Uh-oh.
No, it's really, actually, it's not that bad. But
Okay.
I was hanging out with my friend Damien, who somehow knows everybody on the planet. I don't know how. If you're watching, Damien, yes, you do know everybody on the planet. I swear to God. But we were just hanging out at Dragon Con because I live in Georgia. And I was just talking to this girl, and we were all just talking about paranormal things and just like, oh, she's really cool. And then I realized later that was Michelle Bellinger that I was talking to. And I had no clue until I saw her comment on something that he had. And I'm like, oh.
Do you know she had up here in Ohio? She has she recently sold it, a bed and breakfast, a haunted bed and breakfast.
I had my eye on it, but
Yeah.
nobody beat me to it.
Yeah,
Aw.
Dana was like, we should pool our money. And
Believe me, I thought about it too. That's for sure.
yeah, I think it was like, was it in Oberlin? I only
Yeah,
remember Oberlin
Oberlin.
because of Oberlin College, but yeah.
Yeah.
I would love
I just,
I would love to sit and pick her brain. Like the only time I really got to sit and I got to ask like a couple questions because I was trying not to hog the airtime in one of our classes. But Cindy brought her in to one of our month-long courses, and it was awesome. And I was just like, wow, I would just love to sit and have like an hour to just ask anything. Like she's just like a wealth of information about all those topics that like nobody else really knows. That they're like, well, it's maybe this, like she's like, no, it's this, and has
yeah.
experienced it. And so like some of those like odder topics like elementals and things like that, and how they feel, and how they act, or rather like that you can't really attribute human attributes to them, like she was explaining that, and I was just like, well, I was like, what else can I learn from her? Like she, like, it's like I'd love to just sit and chat with her. She's so cool.
Wealth, and you mean she goes back to the original, shows. What was it? Paranormal State.
Paranormal
Oh
State.
yeah.
So
And
she's been
Katrina.
around for a while, and she's not far from Ohio. Like Ohio is paranormal central, feels like, but she's not far from Ohio. I think she's from Pennsylvania. Isn't she in Pennsylvania? Oh no, she originally from there, originally from Pennsylvania,
Yeah,
and then she was
because
in
they were all
Oberlin.
based in Penn State.
Oh
Yeah.
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 So, Rosie, you mentioned you lived in Georgia, and I remember reading you. You wrote something about seeing apparitions in random places. So
Oh
I
yes.
think it's impossible not to see things. It's like living in Gettysburg and saying, like you can't not see a spirit if you're a medium living in Gettysburg. So what were some of these random experiences? You have one really memorable one other than one of your early
I have a
experiences?
funny one, and then I have kind of a creepy one. So the funny one, um, because we're in the South, there is a lot of, how can I say this? Like, there's a lot of ghosts of slaves and Native Americans, and of course, Civil War and all that fun stuff. But there's a pumpkin patch that we have been going to for a couple years, and they have a bathroom, and this it's not a really, like, it's just basically a little shed of a bathroom. And I remember going in there, and I sat and I look up, and there's three slaves looking at me while I'm going to the bathroom. I'm like, can you like go away a little bit? I need a little privacy right now. But the creepiest one was when I was in Savannah. I was actually on River Street, which I know is like the biggest and most popular place that everybody goes to. And everybody's like, oh, it's so pretty and it's historical. Well, a lot of people don't realize that is where the slave trade was for Georgia. And all of those little shops, those cute little shops, are really freaking haunted. And so I was in one of the shops, and had two levels. So I went to the second level, and I went to the very back, and I see this. It was like it was a slave, but he had morphed into something almost like spidery, because all of his limbs were really, really long, and he was up in a corner, and he was just kind of making a face at me, like, "Get out of here!" I'm like, "Okay, I'll leave."
I've noticed, like when they build that height, it's also a way of almost protection.
Yeah, I think
You
so.
know?
I've seen it other places too, but it was more of like there was one I did here, and I cannot remember the name of the building, sadly, but I had done that was where I did the investigation with Shane, and I was doing the where you cover your eyes, and you have no senses, and you just kind of go from that. And I saw like somebody who had lived there, who owns the house, and he just morphed into this really big, tall guy, and just was like, "I'm bigger than life." and he was an imposing figure. So it was pretty creepy.
You just brought up, though, in your first story, you just brought up every person, every sitter that I've had, their biggest fear of, do they watch us in the shower or do they watch us?
They do.
You
got to tell them, like, okay, this is my business. You know, I'll talk to you in a minute. Just let me do my business.
Here's where we talk about boundaries are important, especially for mediums. Boundaries are so important.
Definitely. Joe or Dana, have you ever had your own odd apparition experience that you haven't brought up yet, or?
Well, there's been a few. It wasn't so much an apparition, so much as a interaction. My brother and my uncle and I were visiting a well-known haunted restaurant in Mesilla, New Mexico. I think it's called the Double Eagle. And my brother's a photographer, and this is back in the film days. And my uncle and I were off, and we were kind of looking. They had like all these portraits and stuff on the wall, and I don't know, for some reason I started like a jerk. I started like kind of making fun of oh look, he's like a colonel in the army, because you know he had like this outfit that looked like it was a uniform. And I saw my brother. He had just like loaded up new film, and he was trying to take pictures of the bar. And he had advanced, you know, back then you had to advance to get past the exposure. And he kept advancing. I'm like, I looked, I'm like, what the hell is he doing? And then he just stopped taking pictures, which for him was like, you know, he was one of these people, you'd go on a hike and it would take him, you know, 2 hours to go what 10 minutes would take, because he's stopping at every little leaf and stuff and flower, taking photos. So he waited until we got out, and he said, as soon as I was advancing my camera to the next frame, the shutter was firing and my finger was not on the shutter. It was just advance, click, advance, click. And that was his professional camera that he worked for for the Albuquerque Journal. So it wasn't like it never happened again. It only happened that one time, and I've never like antagonized spirits since. So
did anything come out on that film?
No,
Yeah.
no, nothing. It was because he had it pointed at the floor. That was the other thing.
Oh,
Because you know you're advancing it as you're advancing it.
yeah.
So
Interesting.
yeah, the other thing I've had here, there's a fort. I live in Connecticut, fairly famous haunted state.
Yes.
Lots of locations.
Not like you have a bunch of movies that are from there.
Right.
Yeah, right. So there's a fort in Groton, Connecticut, called Fort Griswold, which was used during the Revolutionary War, and it's fairly infamous in that Benedict Arnold brought the redcoats there and took over the fort. Supposedly they surrendered, and then the English killed everyone in the fort that surrendered, and then burnt the town down to the ground. So I was there like in the winter, and I heard like kind of musket shots and like it sounded like cannons going off. And in the winter here, every once in a while we'll get like thunder, snow, but it's pretty rare. So there weren't like any storms. It was completely clear day. So that was like, you know, auditory. I could hear it, and I wish I had my little recorder, but I didn't.
That would always happens.
Yeah, so I definitely want to go back there and do kind of a, you know, another investigation there in person.
Very cool. Dana, did you have something? She's here. She's ready to go.
I had a cool experience with my daughter. So she was a few years younger. She's 12 now. She was probably about 10 then at the time, almost 11. But she was taking classes with a mentor of her own and kind of opening up to things and just learning to put up boundaries, safe spaces, but learning about that kind of stuff and how to kind of turn it down if she didn't want to deal with it, which she didn't. And I was like, that's fine, here's how to not be bothered by it, so you can go to the bathroom in the middle of the night without waking me up to turn a light on, and not like I don't run up the stairs in the dark, we all do. Even it's just habit, but we have this boy here, and he's always been, ever since we've lived out here, he's been around, but he will only ever talk into a recorder when my daughter asks questions. And he'll play with my son's toys, and he really loves the dinosaurs that go off, like, of course they didn't have that back then, he's from pretty far back. And so my son like left him a little walking stick out front, and we figured out where he was from. And he's from nearby here. Well, we went to that blueberry patch, and my daughter just stops, drops all her blueberries, and is staring. And I look over and I see this little boy, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool, it's Nathan. And I saw the color of his hat, the color of his eyes, the color of his hair. He was super clear that time. Like I could just see him, he just looked like a kid in like dressed up for a play, but like his clothes were like well worn and looked like the right size, and not made out of today's material. And he was just walking to the little trail to go back to the cabin. And my daughter comes up to me and she's like, Mommy, did you see that shadow figure? And I'm like, honey, that wasn't a shadow figure. And she's like, yeah, it was just a shadow, but I think it was Nathan. I could see the outline of his hat. And so that's the day I discovered, like, okay, all those shadows I saw when I was a kid, now that I'm not like afraid to see, like now I can actually see clearly what these people look like. And so that's like, and then it started happening to my son, who's even younger. He's like, yeah, it's just kind of a mist, but it's not really, I wouldn't say it's a solid shadow. It's just kind of a misty, sparkly. I don't know. And I used to see that all the time too when I was little. So I was like, okay, so the older you get, the more comfortable you get with it, the more clearly you can see. That's pretty cool. Like to be able to like see like a couple of generations, because my mom too, my grandmother, they both had abilities. So it was like, one avoided them, one admitted it. So to be able to like kind of compare notes with them, before learning anything, it was cool to see how different people, like in their various states of either wanting to do this work or, wanting to avoid seeing the things that they could see, how spirit shows up to us. Like I thought it was really cool, like two people seeing the exact same thing at the exact same time. It could look completely different. And that really opened my eyes to like, well, gee, no wonder people are scared in their own homes when they see a shadow figure, because they don't want to see anything in their house, So is that why it's showing up like that? And it looks so startling, because to me, it just looks like a sweet little boy, and he is a sweet little boy. So, it's like, man, not being able to see clearly and like having that ability or just that understanding. Yeah, that's startling, and like, that's the kind of thing that I like to help people with. Like, let me see what's really there, and like let the team come in and see what's really there, who's really there. And a lot of the time it's family, it's somebody that that's just the only place they know, and they're just hanging out. Like they don't mean to scare you, they don't mean to look scary. That's just, if you're not ready to see them, that's just how they look. And they're not trying to, now in Rosie's case, yeah, they were trying to look scary and intimidating. Yeah. They didn't want you in their face, but that's a whole different thing. I've seen that too. And I'm like, I see that quite a bit. And I'm just like, yeah, show me something new, like whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
but imagine how many people had to provoke or be afraid of them for them to cause that fear, or cause that response, or the experiences that they've had in life that weren't resolved, things like that. It's just,
yeah, to want to present yourself like that, it's like, what did you go through in life that makes you want people to stay away from you still, even in death, in this space that you could leave? Like what part of you is still here that needs to be resolved? How can we help you with that? Like,
right.
That's really what it's all about. Like, how can we help you to not have to feel this way anymore? That way you're comfortable. That way the people coming in this space are comfortable. We don't want either of you to be, scared or unhappy here, and it's like, how can we, like, we're literally the medium. We're like the mediator. Like we come in like basically almost like a therapist, like, okay, how can we help you? How can we help you? Like what can be done here, so that everybody's happy. Sorry, my neighbor's slower and it's super distracting.
That's a large part of the, a forgotten responsibility I've noticed. I mean, a lot of people still do that, but a lot of people are going after more of the entertainment factor, and they're forgetting that we're dealing with people,
Yeah.
Right.
for the most part. I mean, I know there's extreme circumstances, in certain areas, but we're dealing with people.
Yeah. Well, I do have to say, I have one really rewarding story about helping a spirit, and it was actually the spirit of my uncle, who he actually had epilepsy, and he was autistic, and he was, unfortunately, like during the time period that he lived, he had to go to they called it the farm, but it was really just an asylum, and they didn't treat him very well. So, he actually, they ended up finding out that he died chained into like it's like a big crib for adults. And so when after my dad died, I started feeling like this kid around me, and I realized it was my uncle, who I've never met. I mean, he died long before I was even a thought. Um, and I had got both my dad and my mom, I got them cremated. And all I could think of is like, I really need to take some of my dad's ashes and put it with his brother. I think his brother is lonely. And when I came up with that thought, I could see him jumping up and down and saying, nodding his head, like, yes, yes, yes. And so, made the trip up to Michigan, where they're from, or not where they're from, but where they lived. And he was way out. I mean, I felt so bad because he was buried in Jackson, Michigan, and the rest of the family was living in Dearborn. And I don't know. I don't know if anybody knows how far that is, but it was a really long drive.
Yeah, it's pretty far.
And so, like, he was buried with like the older folks of my family. And so I really felt strongly like this is the right thing to do. Put some of my dad's ashes with his brother, because that was that was one of the people that he knew intimately, and didn't. I mean, it really gave me a really warm, happy feeling, for lack of a better word. But it was just like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And since then, he hasn't been around. He's happy. And if he does show up, he's just like, hey, how you doing? That sort of thing. But, it felt just so right to do.
That's beautiful. Does anybody, well, actually, you mind if I switch gears?
Sure.
Okay, so I mean, it still kind of goes with what we're talking about, but we talked about how Joe has the Facebook group. One of the big parts of that group, other than the Thursday night, fun stuff, is the trance mediumship. Right. So we haven't really gone into a lot of trance mediumship, and I was wondering if you kind of wanted to talk about your experiences, because, lots of mediums can go into trance. They can go into full trance or partial trance, depending on what they're doing, right? So do you want to share a little bit about first, starting that group and trance mediumship, and what led you into feeling that connection to go deeper into that area of mediumship?
Yeah, sure. I was taking, actually, I think it was in that mentorship class, and one of the other people in the class, she was taking a trance class with Tony Stockwell.
Oh, was that Mandy?
Yeah, it was Mandy.
Yeah.
Oh, Mandy.
So I got really excited because I don't know why, it just something about it really kind of, sparked an interest in me. And so she gave us some pointers, and then I ended up taking a trance class for about 6 months with Lisa Williams. And I've since taken a couple of others with a different instructor. But I think it's just, tapping into that altered kind of consciousness state. And I think as humans, a lot of us do it and don't necessarily realize it. I don't know how many, folks on the that are watching or watching in the future um, have gotten into kind of that flow state in their work where their things are just coming out. You're writing, or in my case, I would be coding, and it was like the code was just coming out of my fingers.
You're in the zone.
I was in the zone. Yeah, and like, all the big sports athletes, the Olympics just finished. Those Olympic champions, they all talk about it was like almost like they were outside of themselves, watching themselves do this, amazing 4x100, or this record breaking Olympic record swim, or sticking the landing on a crazy gymnastics thing, whatever it is, or NBA finals, doing a dunk from like the 3-point line, all that kind of stuff. And musicians get this too. I have a lot of friends who are musicians, and I know Dana does as well.
Well, Joe, even
And
as artists, like every time I
as
pull
artists,
off a
yeah,
good tattoo with with perfectly clean lines, the whole tattoo, smooth shading,
yeah,
I definitely feel like, the spirit of Sailor Jerry took over my right hand, and I had nothing to do with it. Like,
Yeah.
right, exactly, yeah. Anything really. So I wanted to explore that with kind of a safe group, and explore different ways of kind of inducing a trance state. So that those are some of the different exercises. We'll do different types of exercises. We'll listen to like rhythmic kind of shamanic drumming. We'll stare at candles. We'll do just kind of mind exercises, things like that. Sometimes we'll try to. It's a little scary, but try to channel vocally or automatic writing, spirit art, whatever it is. And it's definitely I think an aspect of mediumship that's gaining more attention and getting, a lot more people who are interested in it. I haven't really seen anybody use it in, kind of paranormal situations. I think because it's a little scary to be that open in that kind of situation. But, I can certainly, one of the things that I've been doing is more trance healing, channeling healing energy, and combining that with music and singing bowls, especially. Both Rosie and Dana have set for some of
he's
my.
amazing at it. I swear he saved my life. I was just recently diagnosed with lupus and didn't know my whole life that that's what was going on. So doctors couldn't figure out all these really crazy things that were happening. And the only thing that brought any relief at all were those sound healing trance sessions that Joe did. And he's like, I have this idea. Let's just try it, and that's how most of our exercises are born. It's like, I have this wild idea. Let's just give it a try. And honestly, I think that's why we're so good as a group, and Jade included, even though she's not here. Like, but
She's here in the chat.
Here in spirit. No, but she
not that kind of spirit.
Not that kind of spirit. She's our cheerleader. Like, she's our hype girl.
Right.
No, yeah, not that kind. No. She's got a long life ahead of her. No. Many cats still left to save on the world. She's got a lot of work to do.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just having to surrender like that, and me coming into it not having any formal trance training at all, and knowing not much about it. Like, I'm just winging it, right? Like, so I'm the one that shows up late and wings it usually. That's my part. That's my slot in the group. That and ADHD, like, squirrel. Yeah. So Rosie and I share that. But
a little bit, yeah.
A little bit, yeah. But she's more organized than me.
I hide it. I hide it well. Do the same thing.
That's why we've got so close so quickly, and I think came together so well as a group, because when you're doing trance mediumship and you're especially trying it, for the first time on your own without a teacher telling you exactly what to do, and you're on your own and you're in this group and you're there voluntarily and you can't just like drop out like, oh, Wi-Fi went out, you know, like in the middle of class. Like sometimes that stuff happens in the middle of a Zoom class and you're like, thank goodness I didn't want to do that when I was scared, you know. And they hey, do this in front of the whole class. Do you volunteer? And it's like, no. But it was
Poltergeist
like,
kicks in.
right? Yeah, and it's like, oh, thank goodness the whole computer just overheated. I actually had to move my curtain because that started happening just now. I thought I was going to end up dropping off. But it's, you know, whenever you're going into trance and you have to go that far, that deep, or that out there, that, and just like surrender to whatever's going to come, whatever's going to happen, and actually allow them to use your voice or use your body, you know, change the way you look. It's, you know, you have to be with people you're comfortable with. I mean, that's a lot of trust. You have to build that trust before you even, you know, go under, as I call it. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. And it's just like, these are the greatest group of people to do that with, you know, and they've taught me a lot. You know, I still need to take my formal training, but I love that group and I'm glad they invited me.
Now I find that like trance mediumship was kind of scary for me. I just was really afraid to let go. But I found that drawing, like once I do the music, I'll hear like the shamanic drumming or something, and I'll start thinking, it just kind of getting into it, and then I'll just start drawing. And then what comes out, I'm like, oh my God, what the heck is this? You know, right. And there's been a couple of things, like there was one that I drew an alien, and I am not very fond of aliens, but it came out and I'm like, this is kind of creepy. But you know, I do feel like whatever it is that you feel is most comfortable to you is how it will come through. So like, I don't know, like Joe, you did say music, and I actually used to be in an orchestra. And after you learn the song and whatever, you know, the actual notes, and then all of a sudden your brain just kind of lets go and you just are doing it. And then you start to feel the emotions, and then you start to feel other things. It's like, I don't know, it is like a trance almost. And yeah. I loved it. I just really, really loved being in the orchestra. And also I feel like music and art is very much a universal language. Because like you can go anywhere and you can play, I don't know, like Ode to Joy from Beethoven. And as soon as you play it, they're like, oh, I know what that is. Or if you draw something, there's something in it that somebody sees. I mean, we all know that Cindy has been doing drawings and spirit drawings, and you can see all kinds of different things in it. And it can be abstract, but spirit drawings can also not be abstract. They can be very literal. And I do think, like I said, like it is whatever that you feel comfortable letting go, and that's how it comes through.
JD, did you want to ask? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, I was just going to add, you know, we like Dana said, we try all kinds of different things. One of the things we did try was like basically connecting in and have somebody be like the sitter and have them kind of go into trance, and then the rest of us connect into them and draw what we're picking up, like the kind of journey that the sitter is bringing us on. I don't like that. That wasn't in any of my classes. Like I think we just kind of came up with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was amazing how many like kind of hits we had, you know, different aspects. That's the other thing I think about this group. You know, we're all psychic mediums, but we all have different strengths.
We know each other pretty well personally, you know, but it's like, I mean, we have the Art and Chat Thursday. We're sitting talking about life stuff, you know, and whatever. And what are we going to do on Sunday? But you know, when we did that exercise, it's like when you go into trance, you don't know really where you're going. You don't know what's going to come up. It could be something you've never talked about with anybody. It can be somewhere totally new to you even. And you just go to a place, and whatever you're reading, whatever you're receiving, the fact that they're nailing it, like all 3 or 4 of them, depending on how many people are there that week. You know, we have someone that's, you know, comes sometimes, and she's an amazing portrait artist too. Oh my gosh, like totally
Oh,
nailed it.
Lisa.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But it's just like, it's crazy how accurate they are, and it's something that you've never experienced before, and you're like, how am I going to explain this to them? And then they take their turns explaining it to you, and it's like, nailed it. Like, how do you do that? Like, I'm still just in awe of, like, I love finding like the scientific, you know, like the why, the how does it work? Like, that it drives me crazy not understanding it. Same as math. Like, I can pass college math, but like, how does it work that way? Why does it work that way? It drives me crazy that I don't understand. So that's something that'll just bother me until the day I die, and you know, I'll still be asking that as a spirit someday, haunting you, like, why does it work? But
She'll be
it's
sending you math equations.
yeah.
You can have all the math. I don't like math.
No, I gave up
hated
math
it.
for mediumship.
Well, what's really amazing about that exercise too is you're not just reading, you're linking.
Yeah.
So I don't think people, like a lot of people, I mean, mediums know, but a lot of people, you know, outside of medium circles, don't know that we can link and connect and read together, even though one person, you know, a sitter or a spirit can come and speak to one person, and because that's the person that they're supposed to come to, another medium can sit next to you, link together, and get a different part of the story and fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
And so the way what you did was you're reading, but you're linking within their trance, which is actually a really cool exercise, you know, because you're seeing what they're seeing, you know, and feeling what they're feeling.
I
And
don't know
you
if it's
know,
something you've talked about yet before, but like, the more mediums you have working together, like, just, I mean, it's like a giant amplifier, and it's
yeah,
so cool. Like, you were on an investigation, you know, at
yeah,
Lake Shawnee Amusement Park, and we
Oh
were
yeah.
like, it was like watching a football game. I'm like on the other end of my screen, like, no, over there, it's right here. Like, and we're seeing things, we're hearing
Yeah.
things, we're feeling things, and it was so cool. It's like, man, I'd love to get together with her and just be there, you know. And it
Right.
was, and of course, we were trying to vote you into the box. Sorry.
Sorry. I'm good with that. We're going to be at Post Town at the end of the month, and I was actually thinking to go live and let you guys walk through with
Oh, that'd be
me,
awesome.
like through a live or something. And we can, even if not a live, we can connect with you know, FaceTime or something,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be
Zoom or
really
anything, and
cool.
you can remote walk through, because that's a great location.
That
Yeah.
would be
Yeah.
really fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually,
I'm in.
That was one of our fun exercises we did on a Sunday, because I think we did it Saturday, because you were doing it Saturday night
Yeah.
I
at
watched
Lake
it on the
Shawnee.
weekend.
Yeah, it was on the weekend, and yeah, so we were just all 4 of us connecting in to I think it was on TikTok,
Yeah.
a TikTok live, and each of us were getting different things.
I think I was the only one that had been there, right? So like, I was like, you
Yeah,
guys
you've
gotta check
physically
this
been
place
there.
out and feel it,
Yeah,
because like, this thing there is crazy. Like, this,
yeah,
anyway. Yeah.
Something
and
something happened, you know, it was kind of like when the sun started setting, like the energy kicked up, and I actually started doing readings with the circle of people that I was with just out of the blue, and then I had to calm myself down. I'm like,
wow,
whoa, this is a little
yeah,
bit too much. I had to set that boundary. So I had to step
Yeah.
away and come back, because it just kicked the energy.
I was
It
feeling
was
that way
just,
on the other end of my screen, and I was
yeah,
like, what can
exactly.
we do?
Yeah.
He's like, I gotta go to bed. She's like, I gotta go to bed. I'm like, but what do I do for the rest? I'm so on right now. Like, what can I do
Yeah.
with this? They've logged off. I have nothing to go investigate. There's nowhere to go. Like, what do I do? Like, I'm so ready to go right now. It was like, the energy was palpable, even just watching
Yeah,
live,
Yeah.
just
honestly.
watching
Yeah.
it live.
that was Lake Shawnee, by the way, in case anybody's wondering. But yeah, it kicks up. It's crazy.
Yeah, the energy
I've,
there is just, it's so
I
unique.
I
yeah.
do feel like, thinking about what it was, you know, it was a carnival. It was like a fun spot to swim and that sort of thing. I mean, if you think about it, a lot of people went there at night and, you know, had fun. And I could totally understand why all those energies started to like ramp up and be like, hey, we're having fun. Who are you? Oh, I can see you. You can talk to me. Okay. You know,
Yeah.
And there's so many
but
layers
Hey.
there too of different time periods, things that happen. Like, it
yeah.
definitely wasn't
Right.
a fun place for the people that originally lived there. And then the people that were there before them, what they used it for, it wasn't like necessarily fun purposes. So it was like there's just such a different mix there of different times a day, different layers of time periods, like just coming together, and so much tragedy, but then so much happiness all at the same time. It's like you have this like I don't know. There's not even a word for it. Like it's just this.
Perfect
You have to be
storm.
there. Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
perfect storm. Like you just have to. It's the hot. It's the same thing as the tornado, like you were talking about earlier. Like
Yeah.
you gotta have
Yeah.
that, different fronts coming in, and it's the perfect storm.
I think that's also why I love going to Savannah and St. Augustine. I get such a high from just being around all this old stuff. And I'm like, ooh, what's that? Ooh, what's that? And just like, it's like I'm a kid in a candy store, even though like some of the stuff I'm feeling isn't that great, but it's still like, oh, I have a feeling. Oh, I can see this. Oh, I can see that, and I don't know. It's almost like, I want to say gratifying, but it's also like sometimes when you actually find out that you're right about these feelings, it's just like
Right.
it is. I can't think of the word.
Validating.
Thank you. Validating. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. When I was working as an archaeologist with the Park Service out west, I was working in New Mexico at a park called Bandelier for an archaeological survey. And it was an inventory survey. They were trying to find all their cultural resources in the entire park. And I remember this one particular day, we were working on top of a mesa, and like where I came to the edge of a mesa, for whatever reason, something told me, look down. And it's a drop. Like it's not like, it's like 500 feet down. So I looked down, and there was these two what are called kivas, which are their ritual areas that they used, like kind of like a figure eight, just below me. And it was the first time in that park that they'd ever found kivas like that, kind of off a cliff. And it was just something like told me to look down. And then there was another time I was working in a different park, and we stopped, and I was like, I need to go look at this little white thing over here. It looked like a piece of flake stone, which was one of my specialties. And I picked it up, and I knew immediately what it was, which is the mid shaft of a spear point from about 9,000 years ago. And it was just sitting on the surface, and they had never found that particular type of point in that area before or since. And it was just like something told me to go and look at that. Like something about it attracted me.
So what you're saying is mediums should be.
I am not sure what that was.
That's really weird. We can wait
But
for
anyway, trans mediumship is more popular now. The one member I have going through training actively is actually learning a lot about that, and the main guy in the media is Rob Thompson from the Ghost Finders.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he's been doing a lot. And of course you had Ethel from Holzer Files, Hans Holzer's medium, that she used to do trance that way. Hello everybody, welcome back. We don't know what happened.
Okay, I thought it was
but we're glad you can join us. No, so all three of you just disappeared off of StreamYard. So, but we were talking
I'm
about.
not sure what that was.
Yeah, but we were talking about
It's
other.
just too many mediums.
Yeah, it's the
exactly.
poltergeist that you. Maybe Dana didn't want to answer a question, so she.
Poor Dana.
I was saying maybe all mediums should become archaeologists this week, because that reminds me of what was I cannot think of the woman's name. She was a medium, but she helped a lot of archaeologists find a lot of the Egyptian.
Oh yeah, in Egypt.
Yeah.
What was her
I
name?
cannot think of her name at the moment.
Yeah,
she would say dig here.
She was amazing. Yeah. Yeah, she found I think it's the temple at Dendros, she actually like believed that she was a reincarnation from that time period of a priestess that was there,
Yeah.
and she knew exactly where everything was before they excavated it, and it was documented. A British woman, she married an Egyptian man and lived most of her life in Egypt. Yeah, but yeah, amazing stuff.
Yeah. So that's all I could think of when you were talking about your experiences.
Right. Yeah, I know. Looking back at it, I'm like, oh, maybe I should go back to that, and maybe I could help out.
Well, it's interesting how spirit will guide you to certain things. Like, I don't know, like I went with my parents to Mexico, and we went to the Pyramid of the Sun and Pyramid of the Moon, and I was just standing there, and I knew that they were excavating close by, but I they wouldn't let you go over there or see anything. And all of a sudden, I looked down, and there's this obsidian arrowhead just sitting there, and I'm like, "What?" I mean, naturally, I just pick it up and like hold on to it, but I never even thought like this could actually be something. And then it just something told me to pick it up.
Right.
I mean, we do that in our everyday lives. I mean, I'm sure, JD, you've had experiences too where you go into a space. I mean, and you're like, oh, I should go this way, and somehow you avoid a whole traffic jam, or
Yeah.
you just get
Yeah,
this gut
yeah,
feeling to do this piece of work, and then your boss calls you, and you got it done.
yeah.
Or you ignore that like my brother did. Because my brother has those kinds of things too. I just think he's a little worried about kind of exploring it. He ignored that voice, and he got in a really bad accident, and like,
Oh,
is, I don't know, 10 or 15% disabled as a result.
oh
Um,
wow.
a guy ran a red light,
Oh,
and he was just coming back from lunch, and
hmm.
yeah, but he ignored that little voice. And one night, actually, we were going to midnight mass for Christmas, and I just had this feeling. I'm like, we shouldn't go. We shouldn't go. We shouldn't go. He was having the same feeling.
Oh.
We both ignored it. We got on the road, and it just started snowing, and the person in front of us like did a 360 and spun out, and I'm like, Jim, we're going home. I'm like, we are not going to mass. He's like, yeah, I didn't want to go. I didn't want to say anything.
This is where you need to be open. Like,
Yeah, but this was like, I don't know, like 12 years ago, something like that.
that. Yeah, I know. It's
Yeah.
just like, there's Dana.
Sorry. Side quest.
Side quest. Yeah.
So we're over in time loop, and Irene, do you have a way to stop the stream or no?
I do. All right. Do you want to do the closing? Thank
I
thank you,
can.
everybody. Before JD does his closing, thanks for joining. It was
Thank you
great
for
catching
having us
up.
Thanks for
on.
having us. It's been fun.
Yes.
So thanks everyone for joining us for this episode of the podcast. We hope you were able to learn something new during this video. We will be hosting another podcast interview next Wednesday at 7 p.m. So keep an eye out for our upcoming guests. Also, make sure to check out the RBF Paranormal group to find out more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, JD, Irene.
Thank you guys.
Thank
Night.
y'all.